Welcome to the 11th episode of the Financial Incline. I'm your host, John Bovard. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Alex Burkhart. Alex is an innovator, marketer, and entrepreneur based here in Cincinnati, Ohio. During our conversation, we discussed the businesses that Alex has started and exited and the businesses that he continues to run and advise on. The bulk of our conversation revolves around Alex's Amazon delivery service business, a business that he has been able to grow from 5 routes up to 80 routes. We discuss what has led to his success and what are some of the challenges he's currently facing. Alex is also an adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati, where he teaches a course, Introduction to Innovation, under their entrepreneurship department through the Linder College of Business. I'm very excited to bring this episode to you. I really enjoyed my conversation with Alex, so make sure that you subscribe, like this episode, and share it with your friends. So without further ado, here's my interview with Alex Burkhart. Hey, Alex, thanks for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for those that are listening or watching this video, would you mind just kind of sharing your background and kind of walking us through your career?
Yeah. So, hi everybody. I'm Alex Burkhart. I'm what you would call maybe a serial entrepreneur here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Even though I don't love that term, trying to come up with a new one. But yeah, a little bit about myself. I've actually been an entrepreneur more times than none over the past probably 11 years of my career, but I've also been in corporate America and other organizations throughout. But I like to kind of walk through how I came to Cincinnati. So I'm not from Cincinnati. I'm from Northern Ohio, a town called Mansfield, small town. No one's really ever heard of it, other than if you've maybe watched Shawshank Redemption and seen that movie. It was filmed in Mansfield. But came down here to Xavier University to study entrepreneurship. And also, liked basketball and everything. So that took me to Xavier. And afterwards, I stayed here in town, didn't actually be an entrepreneur right away. I went and worked at Macy's corporate offices here in town, did a cool rotational program. I got to do a lot of really unique things within that organization. But while I was there, I actually had my first idea to be an entrepreneur, decided to quit my job at Macy's, started that business. It was a ticket exchange business called Tixers. Started the business from scratch and later sold it about 2 years in. It was a wild adventure of my life, kind of showed me what the real world of entrepreneurship was all about. And then after that, I actually, was like, hey, I need to buy a house, be a normal person here, get married, and decided to do the exact opposite of what most exited entrepreneurs would do. I went and worked at Procter & Gamble here in town, the largest corporation. I did that, because I wanted to learn. I mean, my acquisition wasn't necessarily a home run, but I call it a nice single on the spectrum, and was at a really young age when I did it. So I went in, learned some more, helped out another company in town called Everything But the House. And then about 3.5 years ago, I kind of committed to what I would call a lifelong pursuit of entrepreneurship. So actually, ironically, I teach entrepreneurship as an adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati. And that's the classroom that I'm actually sitting in right now. And then underneath of that, or over top of all that, I started a holding group called Prospect Management Group. And the vision for Prospect Management Group was to own, operate, invest, and advise, hundreds of companies, kind of a pseudo mini Berkshire Hathaway approach. I would love to aspire to be that size someday, but 3.5 years, we've done a lot of really cool things. Most notably, we have an Amazon delivery business that employs about 120 employees here in the greater Cincinnati area. And we have about 65 Amazon vans, probably here 80 again soon. We've been at 80 and it's been about our peak. We might surpass that this holiday season. And so underneath of all of that activity, we've been able to do a lot of other really cool things, opened up multiple other businesses, and made several other investments along the way.
That's
fantastic. I know that's typically a little bit complicated for people to understand, but I'd like to just kind of throw it out there to paint the larger picture.
Yeah, I love that. And that definitely is not the norm, for most people here in Cincinnati, where it sounds like you're quite the risk taker, right, as some might say, but for you, it probably doesn't seem like a risk. So that's very interesting to me. And, one of the things that I always wonder is, are entrepreneurs, are they made or are they born, right? Like, does someone kind of have just this natural inclination that, hey, I'm gonna go be a business owner, or is it something that, is kind of developed over time as you learn. So if you wouldn't mind taking us back into, what was kind of your earliest memory of money?
Yeah, what's funny is I would say I've got a lot of born in me, I think, also a lot of hard work and made, but I've studied this a lot. I actually talk about this a lot in my lectures at UC, is that, I came from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My aunts and uncles, 4 of them are entrepreneurs, plus my father. And so I just grew up and watched it. Now I saw some of the highs of being an entrepreneur, and I also saw a lot of the lows. And so I think it was in my DNA deep down, but I really had to go in and study it a bit further to validate that, because a lot of us grow up and see our parents or other people around us do certain things, and then we realize, hey, maybe I'm not meant to be an accountant, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever it is, right? And unfortunately, but fortunately, I think through my career path and everything, I've come to the understanding that I'm pretty much almost unhireable at this point, because I was born and made to be an entrepreneur. And so you kind of also mentioned a bit more about the concept of money there. I'll tell you, a lot of people want to get into entrepreneurship, I feel, because they think, oh, I can golf at noon when I want, or I can work for myself and I can make all this money. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I mean, some of the outputs of some of the things that I've done has allowed me the luxury to do some of those things and get some of those freedoms. At the same time, more than anything, I work hard. And underneath the surface, there's a lot of pain that ensues. I actually show this kind of approach called, it's the iceberg kind of illustration, and it shows what happens above the surface and what's actually happening beneath the surface. And so I've kind of flipped my goal around money, which is, yes, if you do all the right things to try to get to the right level and to build the right businesses, hopefully the money will come. But if you kind of focus just on the money, I've actually found times in which I've made more money that I've been, maybe not as happy, or the pain doesn't always outweigh the highs of the process. And so it's definitely a weird concept for me, where when I hear about money, I sometimes don't even look too much at the fundamental financials of a lot of my businesses. I should, I have accountants and people that support on my team, but sometimes I get stressed out about focusing just on the bottom line numbers. I need to focus on the inputs that can impact my business long-term, and cultural dynamics that are going to help us grow and expand. And so, money to me is definitely a motivator in some regards, but it's definitely not my why. And anytime I focus on it, I find that you fall short.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And it sounds like you said early on, you kind of had your family was in it, and you kind of knew, for the longest time. I mean, you picked your major to be entrepreneurship. So it sounds like you had that natural inclination that you were going to be a business owner, you're going to be an entrepreneur. And then, the work ethic is what allowed you to be successful in it. So, so that's great. So it sounds like you got a lot going on, like you said, from the intro. And I love the reference to Warren Buffett, who, I try to read every single thing I can possible about Warren Buffett and, his investment philosophy and how he got that started. But obviously I know there's a lot of things that comes up. So, when people hear that, they probably think, oh, you own all these different businesses. How is that possible? How can he do that? So what is your typical day? Like, how do you kind of structure things? What is your time spent doing?
Yeah. And so I've looked deeply into all aspects of this. And so what's funny is I kind of first start with my priority, call it what I would say my superpower, my ability to do more with less, is my ability to sleep. And it's funny, I got a 1.5-year-old daughter, and my wife sometimes hates this, but I need my sleep. Yeah. And if I can properly, sleep at night and then I start my day, I'll tell you, I'm not a 4 a.m. in the morning kind of guy. Yeah. Right. It's when I can get up and start the day. And when I'm up, though, I'm moving. And sometimes I forget to eat. Sometimes my wife has to call and remind me, and I'll actually have a brain fog halfway through the day because I didn't eat the right thing. But in reality, I'm getting up. I'm actually coming to UC quite often. So I teach class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I call it my lunch break. A lot of people do it at the end of the day. I've done night classes as well, but I have found that this is kind of my home and my structure. that I come into, and I bounce throughout the city. Xavier grad. I still advise and support some programs there, and I go to other random places around town. But I would say more often than none, this is where I'm at. Yep. And then my computer and my phone is on from when I wake up till I go to sleep, and I got my watch on and everything. And sometimes it's funny. Is you'd be like, all right, well, you're beyond ADD. How do you focus and get anything done? And I'll be honest, I'm very intentional about, hey, I grade my weeks and my days around flow and efficiency. And literally our team has what we call our flow meter. Yeah. And I know there's times where I took maybe a meeting that I shouldn't, or I spent longer trying to articulate something to my team, but I just continue to believe in the why behind what we're doing and the learning, and that every day that, yes, I might've had that 15-minute conversation or had that crazy business idea that maybe took me down a tangent or the wrong path, but more times than not, I gotta take some risk, and I gotta try to calculate and feel things out. And then when it's time to hone in and really deliver, then yeah, I got to lock myself in a room, not talk to anybody, and really grind it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's, well, great. Because it's funny you mentioned the sleep aspect, because it seems like it's glorified if you get up super early in the morning, and people talk about how they only need 5 hours of sleep and whatever not. But yeah, I agree with you. It's hard. I can't go many days in a row with little sleep or choppy nights. So, but yeah, that's great. I love that idea of being in flow, being efficient with your time. I think those are fantastic. So, jumping back to, one of the things you mentioned, the Amazon delivery business. So this is something that I find pretty intriguing, because, a lot of people see Amazon. I might invest in Amazon stock or whatever that might be, and it seems like Amazon is just this huge conglomerate, which it is. And they're getting into all these different industries, right? I mean, they're buying MGM Studios, they bought Whole Foods, and it seems like they're kind of taking over the world. So it was interesting to me when you mentioned the Amazon delivery business. If you could just walk us through what that is exactly, kind of how you started that concept, how that works. I guess it's somewhat of the franchise model, but what exactly is that business?
Yeah. So, and what's funny is how I kind of came into that business was out of random serendipity. I have a term for it. I call it Zuki. Just things kind of naturally collide and you can't explain it. But a lot of people just sent me a message, and that was on, I think, Forbes or somewhere, that said, calling all entrepreneurs. Amazon's wanting to partner with new wave entrepreneurs to help them grow out their Amazon delivery network. And so I went and checked it out, kind of in parallel to me knowing that, hey, I needed to get back into the game, and I needed to be an entrepreneur. And what was funny was, every time I thought of a new idea or a new business I wanted to look into, like you say, who was the top person out there disrupting that landscape, or someone that you had to keep your forefront and your sights on, was Amazon. And so ironically, that was the first core main business that I decided to move forward on. And it wasn't a quick decision. I went through over a year of interviews. I was one of the first 180 what they call Amazon delivery service providers. So I was a pioneer of the program. And, it was, hey, around logistics, and I had no clue. My previous business was in the software ticketing world, and I had spent time at Procter and Gamble and marketing and Macy's and so forth. Right. And I just told Amazon, I said, I don't know the difference between a lug nut and a certain other piece that makes the vehicle run, right? But I said, I know people, and I know that's I can connect the dots and find the right people at the right time to want to build something really cool. And that's what we did. And so we started with 5 Amazon delivery vans in June of 2019. And by, within 6 months, we were at nearly 80 Amazon delivery vans. And what we do is we deliver packages to your doorstep. And so there are certain contractors, DSPs, they call us, pseudo franchisees, that deliver packages all throughout Cincinnati. The network has since grown a ton from when I started. And now, that's what we do. I mean, we partner with Amazon, and there's a lot that happens beneath the surface. It was actually kind of cool. I was just at our annual conference. It's the first time I actually got to go to it over the past, call it 3.5, 4 years doing this, because of the pandemic and some other competing things personally. And it was in Vegas, and got to meet, thousands of other delivery partners and people within Amazon. And I continue to look back and say, hey, as much as this has been a head scratching thing, and you'll read things in the newspaper about it and other things, still a lot of questions around it. But I'll say there's many of us underneath the surface that have bought into the system and built really cool organizations, teams, and cultures, and have been rewarded for doing so. And I always laugh, right? And people say, hey, did you make the right choice on this one? I go, well, still have to be seen. But I would say overall, from what it's allowed us to do, and maybe some other things that I'll talk about, it's definitely been very rewarding financially and just personally to build a company almost as an entrepreneur within maybe one of the greatest companies in the world. So right. We'll see what the future continues to hold on that front. But I'll tell you, I left the conference feeling very energized of what the future is going to be with that business, and I'm glad to have been a part of it from the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, great. And so going from 5 trucks to 80. So how exactly does that work? Are you leasing the trucks from Amazon? 1, and then 2, I'm assuming your main job, your main focus is finding drivers, if I had to guess, finding the delivery people. If you can keep them staffed, then obviously there's, got to be some way. And I'm sure they probably provide the technologies to do the logistical side of things. But how exactly does that work? I'm assuming, like I said, to go from 5 to 80, there's got to be a lot of, okay, I can find people, I can get the routes, and then I don't know if you kind of need Amazon's blessing to get more trucks, or so how does that work? Just that process of scaling it the way that you did.
Yeah, your guess is sometimes as good as mine, to be honest, right? It's really 2 sides of the business. There's the fleet side of the business, which is finding the vehicles and it's a combination between leases, rentals, and so forth. And then there's finding the people. And that's where I think we've done a really, really good job of. We've almost taken what I've done in the digital space for other businesses and worked backwards with bringing people through our hiring funnel. And so we've been really successful at finding people to come work with our company and then retaining the right people. To an extent where we've actually, underneath the holding group, right? That was one of the first businesses that we kind of segued into, was a staffing and recruiting firm outside of Amazon. So we help other companies in town find talent. We've helped everybody from small startup businesses, to mid-sized businesses, all the way to large corporations. And we think that's kind of our secret sauce of in today's landscape, with how hard it is to find talent. Right. We believe that we've taken a lot of the performance marketing kind of engines that have been applied to selling tickets, to selling diapers, you name it, and done it in a form where it allows us to recruit and hire people in a unique and different way. And again, we have to sell our product. There's other different Amazon delivery partners that are out there. It's not always how much you pay. It's how you treat people. It's how you communicate things. It's how you incentivize the kind of managers of the business that people wake up every day wanting to work with and for. It's some of the just very fundamental principles that go a long way. And we're not perfect at it. We're continuing to learn, but it's been fun to see how we've done it. And especially during these times, I was kind of alluding to it back before, is these times have been tough to attract and retain people. And we've been highly successful at that. And I think by doing that, that's why Amazon's allowed us to grow in relation to some, other companies. They're still growing as well. But I think exponentially, we've been able to be at the size we've been at because we've been able to prove time and time again that we can find the right people. Yeah. Okay, great. So that answers it. I mean, that was something that obviously has to be very difficult, but it sounds like you have a good strategy around finding the people. So what sort of challenges are you seeing? And it may not be with just the Amazon business, but the other businesses that you're involved in. Obviously, there's a lot of the kind of from a macro level. There's inflation, there's interest rates, supply chain issues, things like that. But what are some kind of high level challenges that you're currently facing? Yeah, I think it's just in today's world with so much noise in every direction, it's just managing expectations as best as possible with your partners, with your employees, and expectations are evolving. I mean, look back to Amazon. how mad do we get if the Amazon package doesn't show up within 24 hours of order to your doorstep, right? And so as I've started to, segue into other businesses or other things, I mean, competition's fierce. And it's a balance between profits and managing customer expectations. And that's why, I do a lot of work in the venture capital space still. And, I love that industry, but sometimes the fundamentals, right, within venture-backed companies aren't always there, right? And even if you look at some of the most successful ones, Uber, DoorDash, Airbnb, you name it, there's many beneath the surface. Yep. Once they go public and they start to do things, they're still losing billions of dollars, right? Because they're trying to invest in customer expectations and all the various things that happen when they grow to those levels, and managing an employee workforce that wants to work, finding the top talent, you name it. I think it's just juggling all those things to stay true to the fundamentals of being a profitable based business while still being able to compete and manage the expectations of the landscape that you see around you. And I find that to be difficult. Where I've launched a couple other smaller, ancillary support logistics businesses around the Amazon business. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of phasing out of those because I did it to see if there was ways we could diversify with other, talent that we already had on staff. But as you go into it, it's not worth taking a semi truck with just one semi truck and doing deliveries for Amazon or other places. You need a ton of people and a ton of infrastructure, and there's a ton of risk to do it. Right. And so same thing on the kind of software side. Yes, you want to build the right recruiting platform or whatever it might look like, but these big players that are out there are investing tons of dollars into marketing to bring people into their platform. And yeah, it's just hard to get that share of wallet in mind. And so wherever you look, it's just juggling that balance between profits and expectations from the consumer.
Right. Yeah. And Alex, I mean, you've done all this at a young age, obviously. I mean, there's your career, what you walked us through, having sold a business, jumped into the corporate world, now with the holding company. So what have you used, or what sort of resources do you have, whether it be, your network, any kind of mentor, reading books, podcasts, videos? What resources have you used to help to build that business acumen, or things that you've turned to that have been very helpful from an educational standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of the things you just said, but I will say heavy emphasis into the right support system. And so when I say support system, that can be mentors, that can even be just the right family and friends that get what you have going on, right? And being able to empathize with what you're doing on a daily basis. So I almost laugh, tomorrow night I got a 9:00 meeting with a mentor of mine that lives near me in Madeira. His name's Adam Weber, successful, digital marketer, entrepreneur himself. And I just got to sit down and find the right people to talk to that understand my background to get the right advice, because you can get the wrong advice from people. Right. And I think that's something I struggle with. And one of the reasons why I've kind of come in to teach at the university is I want to not only try to live every day as an entrepreneur, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I want to empathize with people and try to show them, what's happening on a daily basis, and being relative and relevant, where sometimes you get mentorship, and nothing against, people that have been super successful years past, but then they want to find entrepreneurs and they want to tell them, hey, this is what I did in the 1990s or, whatever. The world looks very different now.
Right.
And so I do want to recognize that there is something to wisdom that can be accumulated over years, right? At the same time, I think you need to have a diversified set of people to get various different opinions. And then ultimately you got to calculate your own bets. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. I definitely think, finding somebody that has done something similar to you. And I agree with you. I mean, there definitely is wisdom to sitting down and maybe talking with an entrepreneur, somebody that sold their business and they're, a couple decades older than us. But I think somebody kind of in the trenches, kind of going through what you're going through, similar age demographic, is invaluable. I mean, I think that's a great way to go about it. So you mentioned, earlier on that, so you've bought and sold a company. you've got the holding company and you're trying to replicate, kind of what Warren Buffett did, Berkshire Hathaway, right? I mean, in Warren's investment philosophy, his holding period is, I'm going to hold these companies forever, right? I'm going to hold these companies. They're going to generate cash for me. I'm going to use the cash from those businesses to go and buy other businesses. So have you focused mainly on starting businesses, or are there certain businesses that you're looking to acquire or have acquired in the past? What's kind of the investment philosophy behind that?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, we're 3.5 years in, the original philosophy was very industry agnostic, right? And just finding the right opportunity at the right time. And I thought my original thesis was, okay, we'll continue to invest in infrastructure and kind of fractionalize the talent across the businesses. But what I kind of found and failed at a little bit was it required a lot of very stern executional systems to be in place in order to be successful across all of those. So what I've started to do a bit more is I've made several investments. So I've invested in several cool companies here in town that are all the way from the startup space, and then mid-sized businesses that are historical businesses, been around for 50 to 100 years, and finding new entrepreneurs to come in to the space to acquire the business, and then maybe infuse kind of startup technologies and methodologies to help grow the business. And so that's where I'm really starting to focus a lot more of my efforts. Is we've actually opened up a business kind of brokerage arm to our business. It kind of sits underneath our recruiting business because they're very similar pieces. We need to find two sides of the marketplace: someone that is looking to buy a business and someone that's trying to sell a business. And if we can match them together and provide them the right infrastructure and resources, then I feel that we can help scale in a more efficient way than rather than us coming in and just trying to start the business or acquire the business and then taking on all those operational complexities. I'd rather have a smaller piece of something else that can be scaled through the right people rather than having a bigger piece of the pie, which is what we've done in other shapes or form. And there's pros and cons to each approach, but I find that that's kind of where my thesis has really led. Is I want to continue to be the expert in the space of finding the opportunity and finding the right people and doing whatever I can to monetize in the process, either from consulting, advising, brokerage, you name it, in order to provide value to those people in that equation. And I'm excited about what that future looks like for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's definitely different forms, right? There's I've been in similar shoes. So I started, my firm, Incline Wealth Advisors, almost 3 years ago. And then, we've also acquired a business too. And, there's definitely something to be said for both, right? I mean, you can get, a lot of upside when you start the business, but there's also something to be said when you've got an existing infrastructure, staff, customer base already established. And in my mind, that acquisition entrepreneurship is very beneficial, especially if you look at the demographics. Even here locally in Cincinnati, you've got the number of baby boomers, the number of people that have kind of these established businesses that may be looking to get out. Mix that in with there's companies that have a lot of private equity firms that have a lot of dry powder. Or the tax rates being where they are, there seems to be these past couple years, maybe not as much this year, but prior years, the M&A market has been pretty active, for sure. So if you're looking at a business to invest in, is there certain criteria that you're evaluating or that you like to see, something that kind of catches your eye immediately, or what Warren Buffett would call kind of his circle of competence? So, certain things that you're looking for in the business.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, for me, again, it's very industry agnostic as long as it's got the right team behind it, right? And so I've actually been very highly involved with Kinetic Ventures here in town, an investor in that, and help them in various different ways. And they've actually built a really unique kind of engine that helps them go through their diligence process and help them apply it in other places. And it's one of the main pieces around it is finding the right team makeup. And I've seen it be very important. And again, it's a little bit of an assessment that helps look at the science behind the way people think, but then ultimately you got to find the right people that have had the right experience and that have the work ethic and desire to move forward. And I've seen it. We've talked about the entrepreneurship through acquisition space that you mentioned. Dave Knox really kind of is an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur here in town and connector that has kind of shown me that space and the opportunity that can continue to evolve from that. And that's where I see, hey, how do you find the right people that are looking for that? They might have been at Procter and Gamble. They traditionally wanted to go do a startup. Well, they might not have been made to do a startup, but could they be really successful leaving that larger organization and then applying that into a mid-sized business? Perfect example, some other entrepreneurs in town like Derek Schumann and Nick Lobert and also Tom O'Brien and different businesses. They all left, a large organization here in town and acquired businesses. They were startup guys themselves, but now they're doing awesome companies. Acme Lock is one of them and Home Stretch is the other. And it's really cool to see how fast that they're growing at the speeds that they're going. They could have gone in and done startups again or helped out large corporations, but finding this middle pack of going and buying a business and infusing these methodologies, they're now growing at exponential speeds. And I think there's just so many people in this ecosystem that aren't even aware of this industry and what it can do. And I think it's going to, like you say, Cincinnati, we don't need to always be the next Silicon Valley, right? Could we leverage our good fundamentals here that are in Cincinnati in this type of space? And I'm excited. I think the opportunity is just limitless.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So, Alex, last question, before I let you go. So, kind of looking back on it, one of the things that I talk to people about, talk to my clients about is, kind of that term of financial freedom, right? Where you can work because you want to work with the people you want to work with, and you're not necessarily working for a paycheck. And for a lot of people, that's the goal, right? That's kind of the new retirement. A lot of people don't want to retire and sit on a beach or golf every day. They still want something to do. So for you in this, what would you say is kind of the goal for your holding company? Like what motivates you? What drives you? What's sort of your goal behind all of this?
Yeah, I love genuinely just being able to help people solve problems that they don't think are, solvable, right? Or they were maybe told no, that they couldn't do it. I just love being kind of that influence and that extra bit of acceleration and energy to help do that. And, selfishly along the way, if I can, find a way to ride that wave with them or myself, that is what I want to do. I want to continue to get more resources under my holding group to then provide more opportunity. And so I've done that. I've made a lot of investments into startups and other businesses here in town with the notion first that, yes, I should be putting that in a 401k, or I should be putting that in investments, in firms like you and other places. And I do that. I diversify. But I have given money where, it's, hey, this is a part of my calling, so to speak, right? People believed in me in my first business, and, I want these to work. Don't get me wrong. I get that they're risky, but I think we need an ecosystem of people that get it, right? And want to be able to diversify and do alternative investments, but not do it for the wrong way, right? Hey, I want to do the next crypto, 0 to a million and, get lucky and all these things that we read about. But instead it's, no, I'm diversifying because this space is growing, or whatever it is, startups, mini private equity, you name it. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, I do want to focus on my fundamentals, right? And I want to grow that way. And then hopefully you have a couple big wins. And then from there, you parlay those accordingly. And so for me, I don't know, it's the learning. To answer your question truthfully, I just want to continue to be a student of the world and have fun while I'm doing it, right? And if I was just focused on the money and wanted to retire and put it in the right dividend stocks and cash flow investments, and I do a lot of real estate too. I mean, that's fine, but I just don't think I'm changing the world, right? And I, but at the same time, you got to be disciplined, and you can't just follow your heart, you got to use your mind a lot. And so for me, it's just a constant balance. So if I'm going through, a favorite book of mine, it's kind of a goofy book, but it's called The Alchemist, and a lot, widely read in different forms, kind of, not always business related, but I tell a lot of business entrepreneurs and students and people to read it, because it just walks you through how there isn't a plan. You got to be prepared for all these obstacles, and you never know where you're going to end up, and you never know who you're going to meet along the way. So I'm just trying to play a part of that. While we're all trying to do cool things, I really want all tides to rise, and hopefully along the way I come out on, the better side as well. But at the end, I don't know where everything's going. It's not about the destination, to be cliche, but it's about the journey. So that's what I'm kind of good to. So,
right. Well, great. So Alex, I appreciate the time today and the wisdom that you shared. If anyone wants to connect with you, is it LinkedIn, Facebook? Where can they find you at?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, probably great, but also, email alex@primeprospecting.com. That's a good email for me. That kind of is one of the main businesses I talk about, which is the staffing, recruiting, kind of business brokerage business that we're really working on growing. So that's a good one, primeprospecting.com or alex@primeprospecting.com. So,
all right.
Cool.
Well, great. So Alex, have a good one. Again, appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate the time. Thank you.